political correspondent for The Sun, Martina Bett. Paul, Martina, thanks for being with us. Let's get straight on. And it's in the Times, is this, about Andy Burnham, Paul?
Well, it's not just the Times, and that's the reason I think that that's of interest. It's the Times, the Guardian, a few other papers. And given that Andy Burnham didn't rule out running for leader a few days ago, which is something of a change from him. Although it's hardly a secret that Andy Burnham has.
He has ambitions, doesn't he?
He has ambitions. But there's a number of deep dives into where he sits, what that means for Keir Starmer, what that means for politics in Britain, and then what could potentially come next. So within it, I suppose that a couple of the elements. One, Andy Burnham is still Mayor of Greater Manchester.
Yep.
Greater Manchester has enjoyed success under Andy Burnham, bringing buses under public ownership, great health outcomes, changing how people perceive it. He has run the city well, therefore he is a Labour success story, but he's a Labour success story who's at odds with number 10. So there's no guarantee that if he were to run, that he could get a seat, particularly a safe seat, that he would need then to run it. Because essentially, if Keir Starmer or the National Executive Committee of Labour invited him in, they're basically saying, all right, come and have a go, which he could do without that.
Turkish voting for Christmas, yeah.
Yeah. But some of the things that are being said about Burnham are interesting and true. And there's a quote from Steve Rotherham, who is the mayor of Liverpool City, right next door to Andy Burnham, and he said that he's known him for 18 years. He saw the way he started to shape politics once he left Westminster. He said before that, politics was starting to shape him. And in a lot of the pieces, the implication and the belief is that Burnham is now, the reason he is connecting is because he seems comfortable and he's talking with authority and things he believes in, rather than trying to second guess potential voters. He has got this authenticity to him, which really connects, particularly with Labour voters, which is something that Keir Starmer, bless him, just could never quite do.
No. It's fascinating, and it's worth reading the write-ups, I think, in all the papers about Andy Burnham. Now, as Paul says, he needs a seat. I think there might be something coming up that they've got their eyes on. Is that right?
Well, as Paul was saying, there's huge hurdles for him to succeed in getting a seat. I think that some of his allies were thinking of Andrew Gwynn's seat because he was a suspended MP and then he had health issues, so they thought he could go for that one. But yesterday, Andrew Gwynn said that he's not standing down.
Right.
So they are thinking 2 Manchester MPs could possibly, stand down for him to, to try have a go. But there's still lots of, struggles. We know that the selection, Morgan McSweeney, was Keir Starmer's chief of staff, is in charge of that, and we know that the relationship between Andy Burnham and Keir Starmer has been very fractious over the years. I think in the piece in The Guardian, they mention a bit in Tom Baldwin's biography, Keir Starmer's biography, that when in 2020 Keir Starmer was Home Secretary and Andy Burnham was working for Andy Burnham, he was saying that he went to Andy Burnham to ask for support and he said no, and Keir Starmer was left furious about this.
They've got beef going back, have they?
Yeah, they've got lots of beef going back. So I'm sure, Andy Burnham is now against the number 10 machine. So it will be difficult. I do think that Keir Starmer finds himself in a really bad situation. In the space of 3 weeks, he's managed to get front pages with lots of different briefings of people saying they want to replace him. I think his blessing really is the fact that there's no clear candidate, and even Andy Burnham, there's lots of people that would like him to replace Keir Starmer, but he's got no easy path into number 10.
No, and we've pointed out he's still not an MP, of course, as you say, so it would be difficult for him. And I always think back to when he was giving a speech, I think it's 2009, I've just Googled it, at Anfield, and he was getting booed. Do you remember that?
Yes.
He was getting booed for a speech about Hillsborough, wasn't it? And it was that moment where he kind of looked around and thought, hold on a minute.
And that completely changed his track and then brought about real positive outcomes for the families affected by Hillsborough. That became such a thing that he wanted to get involved with and get a positive legacy for them, that that one moment changed him. And who knows if there's been other moments like that have made him a slightly different man and politician.
Yeah, and I think you're right as well. It's commonly accepted that he has run Greater Manchester pretty well, isn't it? Right.
Yeah.
So.
And you see, you know, that's commonly accepted. Of course, it's not all been great. Of course, the buses have been a great thing. If you go to Manchester, it's pretty visible what he's building over there. I think there have been a couple of controversies with the clean air zone, for instance, that he wanted to copy what's happening in London, but he was met with lots of public fury about that. But, you know, he's a man that's, Andy Burnham is a man that changed himself times and times over. During the last leadership election, when he tried to have a go, he switched to the right and apparently lost because of that. And it's a very interesting character, someone we need to watch in the coming weeks, especially at Labour conference. You know, his speech will be very well attended, I'm sure.
Liverpool, to mix my royal titles, King of the North, Prince across the water. It's all getting very exciting leading up into the autumn. All right. Let's move on to this story on the front of the Times. Martina, take us through this.
Yeah, it's a very serious warning from Lindsay Hoyle, the Common Speaker, and he basically says that China has effectively been given a licence to spy in our own parliament. This is after charges against two men accused of espionage were dropped. And the reason why they were dropped is because the CPS said yesterday that basically the threshold for evidence had not been met. And this set alarm bells ringing. You know, this case centres around this China research group. These two men were working for the China research group. You know, the Speaker says that what's happened, it's really weird that he leaves Parliament exposed. And I think the concern is really twofold, because there's the security of MPs and Parliament, but there's also the fact that Britain might lose credibility when it comes to responding to, you know, our hostile states. So it's, you know, the Speaker has now written to the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. He said he might bring the charges privately himself, but it's something that we need to watch. And it's also very politically awkward for Keir Starmer, who, since he got elected, you know, has changed tact with the Chinese. He wanted to pursue more trade links with China, and there's all the stuff about the Chinese embassy that he signalled basically the Chinese embassy would be approved. Now, it's not approved yet, but he's definitely cozied up to the Chinese in a way that we hadn't seen under Conservative administrations.
Yeah, we should say that the two individuals involved in this denied the accusations that they were facing, and the CPS obviously decided not to go ahead with prosecution. Let's move on to this story here in The Guardian, as promised from last hour. Headline is amazing, and you'll take us through the reporting, Paul.
Yes, so as it says, Scottish Minister resigns after altercation over gull attacks. The Minister, the MSP who has resigned, is a man called Jamie Hepburn. Up until yesterday, he was Minister for Parliamentary Business. Now, he has been an MSP for nearly 20 years, so he's something of a career politician, and has held different portfolios under different leaders in Scotland. Minister for Parliamentary Business, I guess, essentially means he's got to make sure Parliament runs smoothly and order papers are followed and all those sort of things. And due to that, there was a moment in the chamber when Douglas Ross, particularly little man, was trying
leader of the Conservatives
in Scotland. Yes,
he's not here to defend himself.
He's not here. Well, you know, he's not. Of course, I'm sure he would. And he claimed, as it turned out, it was true, that Hepburn grabbed him, swore at him, and they had, as it is described, an altercation. And it was over what he saw, what Ross saw, as Hepburn denying him a debate on gull attacks in the north of Scotland.
And this is seagulls attacking.
It's seagulls attacking. So gulls attacking led to Hepburn attacking, which led to Hepburn going out. Now, obviously,
we're not finding it funny. Obviously.
We're not finding it funny. You don't, you know, physically grabbing somebody by the shoulder and swearing at them is not to be encouraged. But it does bring a lively bit of reporting. It causes a bit of a problem for John Swinney. John Swinney, as First Minister of Scotland, has got an election next year. He's under pressure from Labour. He's under pressure from Reform. He needs to find a way to continue to make the case for the Scottish National Party, who have been in power for so long and aren't necessarily pulling up any trees. This doesn't help.
No, it doesn't indeed. All right, we're going to move on to... unless you got something to say about the guy?
Not really. I think...
Paul's covered it perfectly. That's fine, and I'm glad we got to it. Let's move on to Boris Johnson's column in the Daily Mail. He's still doing this, is he? Okay.
Yeah, Boris Johnson is in full flow. He says that there's a generation of the wettest people. He's basically railing against today's young people, accusing them of being too timid, easily offended, too unwilling to take risks. He says they're driving less, they're drinking less, they're even having less sex. And, he's using this as evidence that, the youth are being oversensitive, that they're more worried about saying the wrong thing than calling for someone. He makes the example of Charlie Kirk and the Oxford Union, of how some young people basically, just said that they were quite happy about what happened to him. Obviously said it's disgusting, but it's an interesting column, because I think underneath all the bluster, this is perfect vintage Boris. And, there are some interesting currents that I think are quite true, in the sense that younger generations, they do drink less, they do smoke less, and maybe do take fewer risks. Some could see it as a sort of public health success.
Well, yeah, they might be healthy, they might live longer, it might be better for their families and themselves.
Exactly, and for the NHS and so on. But, Boris Johnson said that it is a shame because Britain has lost its spirit, and, it's a bad story for Britain.
So he says in his opinion column. All right, do you have something to say about it, Paul?
Well, I mean, Generation Z are such an easy target. That talk about punching down from Boris Johnson, when there are so many things happening in the world that, as former Prime Minister, you would think he would have insight and analysis. But no, he's talking about how his generation were sharp-elbowed and sex-crazed, which that may have...
that might have caused him.
Speak for yourself, Boris. I guess.
Excellent. Some good chuckles in this one. All right, last one then. Martina, this is yours.
I
think so. Where are we going? We'll go to the Express, I think, and Rachel Reeves.
Another gloomy story, I'm afraid, which says that there's a lot of pressure on Rachel Reeves. She's been accused of losing control of the public finances because the government borrowing costs are at a 5-year high. There's the budget coming up very soon, and lots of economists, lots of experts are saying that she will have no choice but to raise taxes. This is something that we've been talking about. We've talked about, I think, since the previous budget. She's in a very difficult position. We've talked earlier how she cannot find savings when it comes to welfare, when it comes to the triple lock she's keeping, welfare reform. There's no savings coming from that.
It's a very difficult budget coming up for it. Right, guys, enjoyed that. Thank you so much. Last hour from you, but we'll see you again soon, hopefully. Stay with us. Plenty more about that cyber attack across Europe at airports next.
I witnessed the complete destruction